After an extensive, I guess, 4-year rebuild, we're finally bringing it back onto service. I'm going to say a few words in a minute, but Tom Marshall, our founder here, would like to come up and speak for a few minutes also and give you some stories about the 8408 and also the significance of today, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday of Memorial Day 50 years ago. Tom Marshall.
Thank you, Dave. Is the sound about right?
Yep.
May 28th, 1966. The first day that the revived Wilmington Western ran passenger trains on the railroad here. Now, it's ironic that the days of the week were identical in 1966 to 2016. Because our first weekend, which we had advertised for a long time, was Memorial Day weekend, May 28, 29, and 30, same as this year. My dad, who was very supportive of the beginnings of our volunteer operation on the Wilmington Western, always said, well, you know, you got a good thing here, but the novelty is going to wear off. Well, I guess it wasn't a novelty, because apparently it hadn't worn off. You know, I was 42 years old in 1966, so that makes me a wobbly, tottery old thing now. However, I'd like to just mention a few amusing things that happened that year. They weren't so amusing at the time. But a few days before we opened, we were trying to get everything here at Greenbank ready for the big event. And the little Kennedyville station had been rebuilt and set alongside the track here, where the present station is now. And I was tacking on some composition shingles on the new roof, and it had a steep roof. And I was holding on for dear life, just about to fall off. And here was Weldon Stump and Bill Lakel. Bill Lakel was the train master at Willsmere. And instead of helping me, they were laughing their heads off. And while I was up there, we got several loads of crushed stone in big dump trucks brought in to try to pave the parking lot. Now let me tell you a little about the parking lot. This area was owned then by the Department of Corrections of the state of Delaware. And the prison was up on the hill here, the other side of the ball field. It was called the Newcastle County Workhouse. Anyway, we had to get permission to lease this parking lot from them, which eventually we did. But this area had been full of victory gardens during World War II. And then for the 20 years after that, it had just grown up. And there were all kinds of weeds and multiflora rose and nettles and everything you can think of back in there. And it was full of springs. And the old timers said, you're never going to park cars back there. Well, we determined we had to do it because we had no other parking lot. So we had ordered all this crushed stone. While I'm on the roof of the station here trying to hang on for dear life, all these trucks come on and they get stuck down. And here they are stuck in. That area was full of underground springs. And for several years after that, and maybe you still have to do it, there's Orangeburg pipe and trenches all under there going out to the creek to try to drain those springs. Anyway, somehow we got the trucks pulled out, and most of our passengers that weekend had to park up at the prison at the workhouse up here, or else along Greenbank Road because it was just too soft down in there and they'd get stuck. Our new water tower and tank, which is the same location as the present one, had been erected just prior to our first opening. And it was kind of my baby because I had insisted that we couldn't run steam locomotives here unless we had a water tower down here, and that was right next to the main water line there, so it was a logical place to hook in and get water. Well, Harrison Hall built the tank for us and the tower, and had to order a special spout because even though they were in the wood tank business, they didn't have any orders for railroad tanks in the 1960s. So he found this kind of a spout. I don't know if it's the same spout that's still on there or not, but it was on the old tank. And so we started run and used the tank. Well, all was fine except the dropper valve. The quick opening valve to let the water out of the tank through the spout into the tender. And that worked fine until you went to close it. And sometimes it wouldn't close. And I remember many times, I think it's many times, probably was 2 or 3 times, but with my conductor's uniform, climbing up the framework of the tower, up the ladder in the side of the tank, opening the hatch on the top of the tank, reaching down in there to the chain, jiggling the chain to try to seat the valve. By the time the valve was seated, the tank was empty, and about 7,000 gallons of water was out here in the parking lot. So in addition to the springs, we had another water problem, and that was a problem for at least the first year. We finally got a little better sealing arrangement on that valve, but it was a hinged dropper valve anyway. About 7 or 8 weeks after our first weekend, we thought we'd have a special day, and we would invite all the dignitaries, including Governor Terry and all the people in the House of Representatives and the Senate and Dover, General Assembly people, County Council people. The County Council was brand new. We had just gone from a levy court system of organization here in Newcastle County, and so they were all invited. Chick Laird, who had been very supportive of our efforts, was invited, and it was to be a big day. The 98 was on the ground. It wasn't running yet, but it was up the engine house, and it was headed east. So we towed 98 down here and put it on the team track near the water tower there, near where the Yorkland station is now, but the station hadn't been moved there yet. And 92, of course, was headed the other way, and the plan was to drive a golden spike between the 2 locomotives and recreate 1869 out in Utah. Well, all was going well, and this trip, where the dignitaries would ride for free, was to be in the morning because we had 5 afternoon trips to Mount Cuba scheduled starting at 1 o'clock. So Dan Deary was the engineer, and the train was all put together up at the engine house, and the B&O crew came over to inspect it, as they always had to do every morning before we left, and all was well. So they started, I don't remember whether we left Greenbank here, scheduled to leave here about 10:30, I think. It could have been a little later, maybe 11 o'clock. And all this golden spike business was to taken care of just before that. Well, anyway, Dan Deary, who was the most experienced, he was a B&O engineer, and he was the first engineer we had who taught a lot of the rest of it. He was engineer that day, and they were coming down. As they came under the bridge under the Kirkwood Highway, a huge piece of steel, I really didn't see it, but it fell down and hit the front of the engine. It must have landed kind of right on one side of the pilot there. And so Deary stopped, and they got out. Whatever it was, they got it out of the way, and they nursed the engine and train into the station here. And right away they called Weldon Stump because he was kind of the shop manager, you'd call it. He was a volunteer, but he was the one that really got the 92 operational for it. So he came down, and he and his crew of fellows and the engine crew were all up the sand, inspecting the engine, see how badly damaged it was, see if it could possibly use. The dignitaries down here and the ceremony people who were watching it, they didn't know anything was wrong. So this was one operation up here, another was going on as it should be. Governor Terry hit the spike. I think he hit it and didn't miss it. My dad hit it once, and I hit it a time or two. Well, anyway, that was the golden spike part. Well, what happened to the locomotive? They found that this sudden jolt, when this piece of steel dropped on the pilot, had cracked something on the front pony truck. The housing for the truck had a bad crack in it, and it was really unsafe to use. Well, of course, the word was, we've got to use it. We've got all these dignitaries here. We've got to take them to Mount Cuba. So Stump wired it up. He wired it together, tried to keep it from falling apart, and we took off for Mount Cuba. Well, he rode the pilot all the way to Mount Cuba and back, and fortunately it held up. Well, we had 5 more trips to run that afternoon. We knew we weren't going to try it with a 92. So we called the B&O, and that's where 8408 came to our rescue. And Deary was qualified as a B&O engineer as well as one of our engineers, so I'm sure he ran it all afternoon for the afternoon trips. And as far as we know, that was the first time that 8408 was ever used by the Wilmington and Western and passenger service here on the branch. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Tom mentioned an interesting little story just the other day, or just a few minutes ago. We had a new sign put out front, out on Route 41. I don't know if you've noticed it. It's an electronic message board. The old sign was taken down. When they were going to put in the footers have to be approved by Newcastle County. Turns out when we dug the holes to put in the footers for the sign, it filled up with water. It cost us an extra $500 to have an engineering study. The springs are still running over there, Tom. 50 years later. I'd like to give you, first of all, just a little bit of notification. This is our 50th anniversary that we're celebrating this year. And this is the kickoff to a series of events throughout the year that we're going to be having. So today and this weekend is the dedication of 8408, and tomorrow is Members and Reunion Day. You're all welcome to come down and ride in the parlor car. Tom Gears is going to have a special little setup for everybody in the parlor car. Isn't that right, Tommy? There he is. Okay. There we go. And in June, we've got something very special coming up to also celebrate. We're going to be having the Have Engine Will Travel, the locomotive number 126, come and visit us. It's a small steam locomotive that will be brought in on a truck. That will be beginning in June 10th, the 11th, and 12th. We've also have a steampunk day on June the 10th. Coming up in August, for those of you who are very interested in history, we will be having our display of our Charles Phillips collection. In 1896, a gentleman named Charles Phillips rode his bicycle along the railroad and took pictures of the railroad and what it looked like in 1896. We've got a collection of those photographs, and they're going to be on display for the first time over at our visitor center, or excuse me, the education center over at the Marshallton Yards. So today we are here to celebrate the return of service of our flagship diesel locomotive, number 8408. What began as a vision over 12 years ago has now finally become a reality, and I welcome everyone to share in our pride for what has become a crowning accomplishment. The story of the rebuild actually began in 2003 as part of our campaign to rebuild from the devastation of Hurricane Henri. We embarked on a vision not only to restore the rail line to service, which we did, also construct a new office and education center, which we did, but also to establish a funding source for the rebuild of this historic locomotive. Today we celebrate the final part of that achievement of our vision. A little historical background about 8408. The B&O Railroad took delivery of 16 General Motors Electromotive Division SW1 diesel electric locomotives in August of 1940. They were numbered 200 to 215. These 600 horsepower, 6-cylinder diesel locomotives provide 49,500 pounds of tractive effort. Including in this order was the number 208, serial number 1106, which you can see on the gold plaque on the side. The B&O renumbers its fleet of SW1 locomotives from the 200 series to the 8400 series in February in 1957. 208 is then assigned to the Wilmington Yard as number 8408. The B&O, the C&O, and the Western Maryland merge in February of 73, and the engine becomes the chassis system, 8408. In 1982, when HRCV purchased the line, it then becomes the WWRC, 8408. Tom took a little bit of my thunder away. I was going to retell the whole story about the 92 getting hit with the steel and riding it all the way up, so I'll skip that part. But that was the first time that 8408 actually ran on this line. It was 50 years ago today, or as in passenger service. In 1972, when 92 and 98 were both out of service due to mechanical issues, again, Baltimore and Ohio, 8408 provided motive power for our celebration of the 100th anniversary of the construction of the railroad. In 1982, while still in chassis system paint, the 8408 was pusher service for 98 when HRCV celebrated the purchase of the Landenberg branch from the Baltimore and Ohio. On May 25th, 1991, HRCV celebrated the start of their 25 years of tourist operations, displaying the Wilmington and Western Railroad paint. No steam engines were available, so 8408 powered all of the trains to the Red Clay Creek that day. Red Clay Valley that day. HRCV board agrees to fund the authentic restoration of 8408 in May 2010. Meetings with McHugh Locomotive and Equipment Company outline a project that will totally restore the B&O chassis system WWRC 8408. In August of 2011, the cab windows are boarded up, all the exterior appliances are removed, and is shipped by the Wilmington and Western Railway Corporation to Norfolk Southern Morrisville Yard via the East Penn in the Brandywine Valley. It moves on its own trucks through Wilmsmere to the East Penn, where it's transferred up to the Norfolk Southern for delivery to McHugh Locomotive and Equipment, and upon delivery, McHugh starts its multi-year rebuild. In November of 2015, McHugh Locomotive and Equipment completes the restoration of 8408. In February of this year, 8408 arrives back in the Marshallton Yard after an unplanned extended sightseeing trip through southeastern Pennsylvania. I don't know if you ever heard that story. JC and I were very, very concerned that this thing leave Morrisville and come directly to us. And we found out within a few hours that it was on its way to Pittsburgh. So what was done? So what was done to this locomotive? Well, you see, they've closed the doors, but you got a chance to see it a little bit earlier. The 6-cylinder engine, the 567A engine, was replaced with a C-block engine. The air compressor was replaced, traction motors were reconditioned, the wheels were replaced, there was all new wiring, radiators rebuilt, main generator was rebuilt, the auxiliary generator was rebuilt, the interior of the cab refurbished, and the frame of the cab was completely rebuilt and heaters were now installed. Rough total cost of the project was about $450,000, but much of the work was donated by McHugh Locomotive and Equipment Company. Stacy McHugh over there next to his truck. in the green hat. There are many people who made this restoration possible, and some of them are here today. I would like to thank, one more time, the Q Locomotive and Equipment Company and all of their employees. Let's have a big round of applause. Great job, JC, great job. The Board of Directors of Historic Red Clay Valley, the Brandywine Valley Railroad, the East Penn Railroad, Jack Dougherty of Ben's Hydraulics, our friends at UTC, Frank Ursone, who provided the wheelwork for us, Jerry Tompkins at Summit Equipment Rentals, everyone who donated to the campaign to rebuild. And much of the historical content that I read today came from Bob Wilhelm's book, The Timeline, the WWRR Timeline. If you've not seen this publication, it's an amazing compilation of the Wilmington and Western Railroad, HRCV, and the Landenberg branch. These are being pre-ordered in the gift shop today. If you would like to order yourself a copy, you can do so before we depart on the 12:30 train or anytime today. The Timeline by Bob Wilhelm. Bob, where are you?
Down here.
Great. I'm way down there. Bob, I was way down there. Thanks. Thanks to Bob Wilhelm for compiling this for our 50th anniversary. These are on display. You can actually look at it, but you can order pre-order a copy of it in the gift shop today. I would like Annie McHugh to come forward. We're going to actually place the Herald on the front of 8408 and officially declare it back in service.
Woo!